Just trying to go live on Instagram, if you give me a moment. No idea if that's working. Very annoying. Let's see if it's working on LinkedIn. No idea. Okay, forget about it. Not a problem. Sorry, Mark. Just trying to also stream to LinkedIn and Instagram at the same time, but it is annoying. Okay. Just pulling up Instagram, TikTok, excuse me. So much going on. And it is the 23rd of February. There we go. Hello, Oliver. How are you? That's good. Normally, the stream doesn't appear or it's not pushed out on YouTube, so that's fantastic. The main audience for the stream is on TikTok. But it looks like it's starting to get onto YouTube. Okay, I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. Try to adjust this. There we go. Let's see if that works. There we go. All right, that'll do. Good morning, TikTok. Oliver, no. I tried to stream at 10 a.m. UK time, but I'm 2 hours late today. Basically, I'm not very regular when it comes to the stream. As long as it gets done, that's kind of my only objective. But on Monday, I often have a lot of admin stuff to do in the morning, so it's a bit later. So what happens with the stream, though, is I'll do the live stream on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. Trying to get it started on LinkedIn and Instagram as well, but that's a bit of a pain. But it goes to all of those platforms at the same time, and then afterwards, the raw version of the stream, the kind of clean recording, will be downloaded, edited, and then put up onto YouTube. So YouTube has all of the kind of tidied up versions of the stream as well. So if you do miss it, because I'm not very good at doing it at the right time, everything's available here on AI with Kyle. You can see all of the lives here. And then there's also nicely edited versions. And then everything appears in the newsletter as well. So this is a newsletter from a few days ago, which is based on the presentation. So I'll talk about that in a moment. Right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, TikTok. How are you guys doing? Let me stop faffing around and get started. Sorry, editor Mark, being slow. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, the 23rd of February. Almost said January, but no, we are already pushing through 2026 very quickly. And because February is a short month, we will very quickly be into March. Today, I'm going to be taking some time out to look at a question that people keep on asking me. And I just want to get it cleared up once and for all. How do you build a website using artificial intelligence? Now, it seems like a very basic question, but as soon as we scratch the surface, it gets a little more complicated. So I'm going to be walking you through how we build a website using AI, but more specifically, do you actually need a website, or are you trying to build an app, or is it somewhere in between? We're going to be talking a little bit about definitions, but also what do you actually need to build? So we have to start there. So we're going to be looking at building websites using artificial intelligence, but also what that means and therefore what tool you should be using. So it's confusing right now. Really confusing. There's an awful lot of tools out there. They're all vying for your attention. They're all marketing at you. They're all saying, hey, use us. We're the best tool for XYZ. If you are trying to build a website, it is very difficult to know which one you should be using. So we have the regular builder platforms. These platforms have been around for a while. We have Wix, we have Squarespace, we have Webflow. We have, I suppose, WordPress. It's not a hosted builder, but you use the WordPress files and you build it yourself. These kind of platforms have been around for a while. A lot of them have been bolting artificial intelligence on. So Wix, for example, purchased Base 44, which was a vibe coding website builder. They purchased them and brought them in-house because they realized, oh, The times are changing and we need to provide an AI solution alongside our builder. So these builder platforms are still solid options, especially if you don't want to get your hands dirty with the kind of nitty gritty of the code itself, even if you're using vibe coding. So these work perfectly well. Nothing has really changed. They've added additional AI functionality, and if you just need to get a website up and running for your business, they're fine. The main downside is that you're going to be paying $20, $30 a month for it, but if that's a business expense, if you're making however many thousands of dollars a month in revenue, that shouldn't really matter that much. So these are still very viable. I don't want to say don't use them. Then we have the kind of the new kids on the block. Now we have, let me just, got some stickers here because I went and visited them. There we go. We have Lovable. Lovely, that's very nice, isn't it? Lovable, we have Bolt, we have V0 from Vercel, and we have Replit. These are vibe coding tools. So these allow you to build applications. A lot of people have been using them to build websites, and I'm going to talk about why they're not necessarily the best tool to use for the job. This is no shade on Lovable, this is no shade on Replit. They're just not necessarily the best tool for the job of building a website. So that's why we need to ask, wait, are you actually trying to build a website or do you want to build a web app? Big question, and if you don't know the difference when you're starting out, you're going to get in trouble later. And then we have kind of a continuum onto the more complicated tools, the more powerful but more difficult to use tools. So we have Cursor, we have Claude Code, we have Codex from ChatGPT, which I've been using for the last couple of weeks and love, and we have things like GitHub Copilot. So I actually use Cursor, Claude Code, and Codex at this kind of level. These are for more structured and complicated developments, but you can also use them to build websites. And in fact, I build my websites using these tools here. So unfortunately, it's complicated. There's a huge ecosystem of different tools that you can use. All of them are kind of saying, hey, you should use us, we're the best tool for the job, but they might not be. You need to start with yourself, your technical abilities, how quickly you need to get your project up and running, what kind of level of tech sophistication does it need. If it's just a simple website with some details about you, for example, and it doesn't have any e-commerce, it doesn't have any complications on it, you could probably get away with doing it with a much simpler tool. So I get it, it's extremely confusing. So what we need to start with is asking, do you actually want a website or do you want a web app? Again, the lines are a bit blurred because an awful lot of the websites we access now are actually applications. So you might go to a website like Amazon and you kind of assume, oh yeah, it's a website, it's amazon.com, that's a website, right? Well, no, not really, because there's an application sitting behind it. It's more like a piece of software that we just access through amazon.com. Same with something like Netflix, for example. Yes, you can go to the Netflix website, which is netflix.com, I assume, but powering all of that is actually an application. It's a piece of software. That's how they're able to serve up videos. It's not just a website you go to and they've stuck some video files on a page. It's a lot more sophisticated than that. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes, but because you don't necessarily see it, it's kind of easy to mistake it for a website. So a lot of the modern websites we go to now are actually web apps. If you are just trying to build a very basic web page, which talks about you, your services, your business, maybe it has a contact form, you don't actually need to build a complicated web app. You can get away with a website. One way to talk about this, again, this is blurring lines and I'm simplifying, but a website tends to be more static, whereas a web app tends to be more dynamic. With a website, often it's just information. It's more like a pamphlet. It's a document. You can go on, you can see that information, but you're not actually interacting with it. With a web app, there tends to be more interaction. So the user will come onto the website, they will be able to enter details, they'll be able to set up a user account, they will be able to maybe pay, they'll be able to access tools, services, stream videos, etc., etc. All of those things require something more complicated than just a basic website. Now, for anyone who knows this stuff, you know I'm oversimplifying. That's fine for now. Just don't come at me, because I know there are people in comments saying, well, actually, it's blah, 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 blah. We're keeping it simple on purpose, okay? There is a reason for this. So the reason this is a complication is a lot of people and I've been talking to people in my WhatsApp group, I've been talking to students, they build a basic website using something like Lovable, these guys, and then they say, well, I built this website, but I can't find it on Google. It's not showing up on Google. Why is that? There's a technical reason for that. So we're going to skip to this. When you build a website, generally it is visible. It's a nice, easy to see. Let me actually go to mine and look at the page source. Let's see if this works. So this is what's behind the scenes of a website. Okay, this is a terrible one to look at. We need a simpler one. Actually, I'm not going to bother for now. When you build a static website, the actual text and the actual formatting, etc., is available in the HTML and the CSS. Don't worry, you don't need to know what those are. You don't need to know how to write them. But it is visible. It's basically a document that has all of this information in it. That is fantastic because when Google comes to your website, it's able to see what is on the website. So if you've written a blog article, and Google comes to that website, it can immediately read that blog article and think, okay, there's something valuable here. I'm going to show this to more people on Google. This is the basis of search engine optimization, SEO. SEO is basically a fancy way of saying getting to the top of Google. So we write blogs, we create content in order to rise up the ranks of Google. If we start to appear on the front page of Google, if we're number one on Google for a certain search term, for example, that will bring us a flood of traffic, which can help to drive our business. It can help to get us seen. So that's why we do it. Now, this works because Google crawls the whole internet. They have things called spiders. It's very scary sounding. These spider bots go all around the internet, crawling and seeing what's going on every single website on the internet, pretty much. And they can see, oh, this is a blog article about how to use ChatGPT. Awesome. I'm going to put that up against the other websites about how to use ChatGPT and then rank them based on how useful they are for the visitors. I'm simplifying a lot here, but what gets us in trouble is when we build with something like Lovable, we're using something called we're using something called client-side rendering. That means because it's an application rather than just the text, it isn't just a blog article that's visible in the code, it is an application. So when a normal visitor arrives at that page, the application runs and they get to see the content and they get to play around with the website and see the blog article, see the videos, etc., etc. Fine. So they don't know that it's an app. They don't know it's a web page. The visitor doesn't care. They just see the blog article. Now, the problem is when Google arrives at that page, it's going to see a blank page and maybe a few lines of code, which are the lines of code that start the web application. That's all Google's going to see. It is not going to see the blog article itself, which means Google can't go back to its big data processing and say, okay, this is a good blog article about how to use ChatGPT. It doesn't know what's on that page. So this is a huge problem that people run into using tools like Lovable. They built a web app, not a web page. And when it comes to ranking it on Google, getting seen on Google, Google is just seeing it as blank pages. Or maybe Google is seeing a couple of lines of code. That is it. So all of that hard work and effort that goes into writing blog articles, into creating resource pages, into filling that site with useful information goes to waste because Google cannot read it. Google cannot access it, and therefore it will not rank on Google. Now, obviously, SEO and Google is only one way to get traffic to your website. You can 100% get it through social media. You can get it through adverts. You can run adverts, bring people to your website. You can get links from other people who link back to your website. So SEO is just one way of getting people into your website, but it's often an important one that people want when they set up a website for the first time. They want people to be able to search for their website and find it on Google. They want people to be able to search for a blog article they've written and find it on Google. If you use a vibe coding tool, a lot of the times that will not happen. So if you go on like the subreddit for Lovable, half the questions are people like, I built this site and for some reason Google can't see it. What's going on? And so again and again, people have to be told, well, it's not really the right tool for the job. Now, there are workarounds. There are ways to make it serve up static pages. So it shows a web page instead of a web app, but that requires more technical work. It requires more time or money spent on getting it to work. So instead, you just should use the right tool for the right job, which is not Lovable for building static websites. I'm picking on Lovable here, not because I think it's bad, but because I think it's great. I think it's a really good tool. And I'm going to talk about how we can still use it in the workflow. But this applies to Lovable, Bolt, V0, Replit. I think Replit's a bit better at it. But generally, if you're building a web app, it's not necessarily going to be seen by Google in the same way as if you're building a static page. So that's the important point here. That's the technical reason. You don't need to know the technical reason. You just need to know it's not going to necessarily show up. So when we are building, we need to think about what we're building and what the actual objectives are. If we're just building a quick landing page, and we're testing adverts run into it. So if you watched my live last week, I talked about this, how you should test an idea, but don't spend months and months building that idea, building that product, but instead spend an afternoon, spend a few days building landing pages, sales pages, and run adverts to those sales pages. For this, so I run 5-10 sales pages at a time, running adverts to it, testing whether or not people will buy on it. That tells you whether or not it's a good idea and whether you should push forward with it. That was a guide that I wrote last week. Now, for this particular instance, building a sales page using Lovable or using Bolt, V0, Replit, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine, because you're not trying to rank that sales page or that landing page on Google. That is not the purpose here. You are just throwing up a quick test page, maybe 5 pages, 10 pages, seeing which one works best, and then using that to decide whether to proceed with a business. So for landing pages, AI tools are absolutely perfect because they allow you speed of iteration, and they allow you to get something launched within an hour instead of spending weeks and weeks on it. So absolutely fine. For things like blog and content sites, if you are relying on SEO to send you traffic, I would highly recommend against using a tool like Lovable. I wouldn't use a vibe coding tool that builds you an app because of the SSR versus CSR, server-side rendering versus client-side rendering problem. It's just not going to rank. So if you're building a directory, for example, a directory of links, don't use it because you're not going to get the SEO, and that directory sites live on SEO. They live or die. If you are building e-commerce, this is a slightly different thing, but if you're building an e-commerce site, that's a really complicated thing to vibe code. So this is slightly different to the SSR versus CSR issue. But building a e-commerce website is complicated. It's a big task and it's high risk. If something goes wrong and you leak a customer's credit card details, for example, that is very high risk for you as a creator. So if you are doing e-commerce, I highly recommend you just use an off-the-shelf platform. Yes, you could vibe code it yourself, you could create it yourself, but the risk reward there really isn't, it's not worth it. Considering you spend $20 a month on Shopify, and it would do everything for you. You could use WooCommerce. That's absolutely fine. The one I personally use is called Thrivecart. So Thrivecart they have a one-off, oh look, they have a Chinese New Year sale. So right now it is, you're going to tell me how much it is? I'm not an affiliate, I'm just telling you about this. So it's $1,000 right now, one-off, and that's it forever. I think I have that one. How much is Ultimate Access? Or $1,200. So that's another option. That might seem like a lot to you right now if you don't have a business, if you don't have revenues generating. If you do have revenues, then buying a lifetime license for this makes a lot of sense instead of spending $20, $30, $50 a month on Shopify. The main point though is don't try to build your own e-commerce using vibe coding because it is very complicated, very high risk, and it's going to just lead to tears. Can you do it? Yes. Should you do it? No, probably not. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You're going to waste too much time and it's going to be too high risk. So you need to match your tool to the particular project. Here is a basic decision matrix. So you start your project. Is it e-commerce? Are you going to be processing if you do have a storefront, lots of shopping, etc., and it's primarily an e-commerce site? If so, just use Shopify. Honestly, just make your life a lot easier. Or you can build the website and then you can build in your sales through Thrivecart or WooCommerce, that's absolutely fine. But if you just want speed, just use Shopify. So no, let's say it's not e-commerce, that's fine. Do you need it to rank on Google? If you don't care about it ranking on Google, if it is just some landing pages, or maybe it's a portfolio page that you send people to via social media, that's fine. You are going to use client-side rendering. So you can use something like Lovable, you can use Replit, you can use V0, you can use Base44, one of those vibe coding tools, and that'll be absolutely fine. If you do need it to rank on Google, so something like AI with Kyle, I have a daily newsletter. So there's a lot of content here every single day. This is just one newsletter here that you're seeing on screen. That's one. This is a very rich source for search engine optimization. So I want it to rank. I want this to be pushed on Google. So going into a project like this, I know this is an SEO based project. If that is the case, don't use Lovable, don't use Replit, don't use one of those vibe coding tools, but instead you're going to be building something a bit more sophisticated. The next thing is, how complex is it? Are you going to have user access? Are you going to have, kind of product tools on it, etc.? Then you're probably going to have to use a more complicated tool like Claude Code. And then you need to, of course, take into account what your technical skill is. If you are not comfortable using Claude Code, you're not comfortable using a Codex yet, then I'd actually recommend starting with something like Lovable for now, and then building up your confidence until you are ready to use those. They're very powerful tools, but they require a little bit more comfort with the technology. That's all. So in terms of if you are building yourself, you get to this slightly complicated, actually, we'll skip to this. There are two parallel paths you can take. Which you take depends on how technical you are and what you're trying to build. I highly recommend making your first project something that is less technical. If you out of the door try to build a website like aiwithkyle.com, which has courses that you can go through, it has email collection, it has tools like this. So this is an interactive quiz that you can fill out. It has directory pages like this one. This is the AI canon, for example. It has a community, it has catalogs of playbooks, again with embedded videos. It has a whole video player section. Let me see if I can pull that up. Here we go, video libraries and stuff. This is quite complicated as a first project. I would highly recommend starting with something called a portfolio site, which is literally, this is a landing page. This is who I am. So I have one at kylebalmer.com. This is an example of a portfolio site. It's literally, this is me. There's some text here, a couple of cards. You can click to go places. You can read my full story, etc. This is what we'd call a portfolio site, or just like a very, very basic web page. Super basic, non-interactive. I would start with something like this and use Lovable, personally. However, when you want to build something a bit more complicated, we can then either start from scratch using the more complicated tools, or transfer from Lovable. And I'll talk about this in a moment. So first up, the first pathway is nice and simple. You use Lovable, you use Replit, you use V0, you use, God, I forget the names of them. I should know this, I've said it so many times. Bolt. I always forget about Bolt. You go on to the website, you type in some prompts, it will build the website for you. It will deal with the back end, and it will deal with the front end. It will allow you to buy a domain. So you're going to buy something like aiwithkyle.com directly through them. Costs about $10 a year. And then you're going to press a button and it's going to deploy. Let me pull up Lovable actually, so you can see what that looks like. So I would start a new page and I would literally type in so I want to build a new portfolio website for AI with Kyle. And I would plan with it. So you put it in plan mode, it will ask you questions, it will gather information, it will ask you to upload documentation about you, for example, in order to build that page. Once it has built that basic page, you are going to, I'm not sure if I can do it because it's already published, but at the top there will be a publish button, and you are just going to click that publish button. And it will ask if you want to use a Lovable domain, which would be like kylebalmer.lovable.com or .dev. that's fine. Or if you want to buy a domain from them, so you buy aiwithkyle.com and you spend $10 a year on that. But then you press the button and boom, it's done. It will complete everything for you. So that is the very simple way just to get something done and out the door. I highly recommend that for your first project. If you've never built a website, just do that. Don't worry too much about SEO. Don't worry too much about if it's the best tool for the job, or if it's going to be, the most optimized. That comes later. Just build something, honestly. However, if you do want to build from scratch, if you are more comfortable using vibe coding tools or agentic engineering tools, then what you're going to do is you start by creating a GitHub repo. So GitHub is free. And basically it's like cloud computing for your projects. So you're going to go ahead and create a repository. It's a little workspace that you're going to be working out of. You're going to connect that GitHub repo to Claude Code or to Codex. I highly recommend Codex at the moment. That's what I've been using a lot recently. I've been mainly using Claude Code for the last year, 2 years. I think it's only 2 years old. Yeah, I've been using it for a couple of years now, and it's very good. However, Codex, the Codex app in particular, which only came out a couple of weeks ago, very, very, very good. So you will connect up your repository, and that's going to give it a cloud storage where it's going to keep all of your information. And then you can work with Codex, you can work with Claude Code, you can work in Cursor, whatever your tool is. But right now, I'd recommend using Codex. You can also, if you want to save money, you can use anti-gravity. This is from Google. Right now, this is free. So the individual plan is $0 a month. We do like that. And again, we would connect that to the GitHub repository, and that gives us a file space to work out of, and then we've connected our tool. So again, it doesn't matter what you use. It could be anti-gravity, it could be Claude Code, it could be Codex, it could be Cursor. They're confusing because they're all C's. You connect it into your GitHub repository, and then you build. So you're going to build by, again, talking. I want to build a new portfolio website for AI with Kyle. Enter. Boom. You are still just chatting with this tool. That's why this stuff's really powerful. I'm not going to do that because that's a live project. Once you are built, at some point it's going to probably try to set up a backend. And you might be thinking, well, what the hell is a backend? A backend is not only, but it's primarily a database. So let's say you are running a website where you want people to be able to sign up and they're able to log in and they're able to access stuff in your website. Then you're going to need a database in the background, which keeps their username, it keeps their password, it's encrypted so you can't see it, it keeps their email address, etc. All in like a safe database, which connects to the website. So if you think of the website kind of being at the front, that's the thing that people see. In the background, there is something called the backend, which is the database and all of the workings that a average user does not see on a daily basis. So if you think of something like Amazon.com, what we're seeing right now, this is the front end. We are seeing the thing that points towards the visitor, the front end. Behind this is an incredibly complicated application, incredibly complicated databases of all of the users, databases of all of the products, databases of all of the prices, the price changes, databases of their third-party sellers, etc., etc., etc. A huge amount of information that's not sitting in the website per se, that is sitting in databases, sitting on a server. So you are going to do something similar. You can use Supabase, you can use, there's a bunch of them, you could use Firebase, you could use Convex. I've heard very good things about it, but I haven't used it yet. There are many, many different ways you can do this. I personally use Supabase. You can use it for free for a while, and then you're going to be spending about $20 a month on it. I've lost my thing. Oh, there it is. And once you have this set up and running locally on your computer, when you are ready to publish it, when you're ready to take it live onto the website, you're going to have to connect it to some kind of host. So there's a whole bunch of different companies you can use. Again, you can use Vercel. That's what I use personally. There's Netlify, Cloudflare, Flare can host it, GitHub. You can actually buy hosting through a company like Namecheap. You could, if you are mad, do it through GoDaddy. I do not recommend it because they are terrible, but you're going to have to buy a host. And what the host is basically a computer that is on 24/7, and all of your files go and live on that computer, which means that if somebody tries to access your files, tries to access your website from anywhere in the world at any time, your website is going to appear for them. You could technically host from your home computer, but what happens when your computer's off? It's not going to work. Or what happens if your internet is slow at home for whatever reason? Then people won't be able to get to your website. So for that reason, we send our files to a third party, Vercel, Netlify, etc. They keep hold of the files, they keep them secure, and they make sure that people are able to access our website. Very, very standard. So you are going to set up the backend, Supabase. You're going to connect to a host like Vercel, and then you're going to be able to publish your website. So there's a few more steps here. These are all things you can learn 100%, but these are additional barriers to getting your website published, which if you're just starting out, you do not want to be dealing with, honestly. One thing I do want to make very clear is you might be thinking now, oh, okay, well, the best way is Supabase and Vercel and using Claude Code. That's just going to increase the time it takes for you to publish. So what I recommend is you start with something like Lovable. You start building, you get it into a nice shape, so into a look and a feel and with a basic functionality that works for you. You can then choose to deploy it using Lovable, absolutely fine. Or you can transfer your project into this second path. So what you're doing at this point is you have built the basic prototype on Lovable. So let's say, I think I did do this one. This is a website. I built the front end. I think I built this live on stream. It allows you to contest parking tickets in the UK. Basically, is it live? Might be able to go to it. I forget if I took it live or where it's hosted. A few publisher sites. Okay, so this is, I think I did take it live elsewhere, but this is what it would look like. You can click on it, you can upload a ticket, you can review the details, appeal grounds, your story evidence, etc. And it generates an appeal letter. So if you've got a parking ticket in the UK, you can use this. So it's just a fun little project. Let's say that I've built this, I like the look and feel of it, it basically works. Maybe I've sent the link out to a few people and it works for them, and they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's say at that point that I decide, okay, I want to make this a bit more sophisticated. I want this to show up on Google, really important, and maybe I need a bit more power, and I'm going to need Claude Code to develop it to the next stage. What you can do is inside of Lovable, you're going to connect it to, have they hidden it? Where is it? There it is. You're going to connect it to GitHub. So remember we mentioned GitHub in the second path. You can connect your Lovable project, your Vercel project, your V0 project, your Bolt project, your Replit project. You can connect them to GitHub. What that means is you can push all of your files from Lovable or whatever your vibe coding tool is into GitHub, and then you can pick those files up in Claude Code, in Cursor, in Codex, etc. So then your more advanced tool can see all of those files, and you can say to it, hey, I built this in Lovable, and I want to make it server-side rendering so that Google can see it, because I want to focus on search engine optimization. I want to add these additional features. I want to set up a proper Supabase, bring it over to Vercel, etc., etc. But you can do this once you've built the prototype in Lovable. So this is how I personally use Lovable. I use it for rapid prototyping to quickly build a project, to get an idea of the shape and the feel of it, to see if it's actually a good idea or not, because lots of us have ideas up here, but as soon as we get them out onto paper, or in this case into code, we realize quite quickly, like, nah, that's rubbish, that's not very good. Or we build a prototype, we send it out to people, and they're like, I don't really get it, I don't see what the point is. By building very quickly with Lovable, we can move through that process very quickly. And then once you've hit onto something which you've decided is a goer, you can then move it into the proper stack. Again, whether or not you need this level of sophistication, this level of complication, whether you need to put it in Supabase, Vercel, and publish it yourself, depends on the project. If it is just a portfolio site, if it is just a, hey, this is me and some things I've written, you probably don't need this level of sophistication. So you have to take that into account. Just because it's more complicated and more powerful does not make it better. So I think this is the key. The best website is the one that's live. It is not the most sophisticated. It is not the one that you've spent weeks or months tweaking and building with the most advanced AI tools, putting it on the most optimized database. It doesn't matter if you haven't published. It's much better to publish, start getting people to it, start collecting up feedback, start working out what the next steps are, and iterating from there. So that's why I still recommend, even though there are limitations, I still recommend using something like Lovable to build quickly, just to get it out the door, knowing that if you need to scale up, if you need to get more sophisticated, you can always do that. You sync it up through GitHub, you connect your more complicated tools, you push from Lovable into GitHub, and then you pull from GitHub into your other tools, and then you continue your work there. That is exactly what I did with AI with Kyle. I built the prototype on Lovable, realized, okay, this is going to be a more complicated, a much larger project, so I need to get this into a better shape. So I brought it over into Claude Code and began the work there. So you can 100% do that anytime. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or done, sorry. You just need to get on with it. You have to get it built. So very quickly again, complicated marketplace. Lots of people saying that they're the best tool for the job. The best tool for the job depends on what you're trying to build. Are you trying to build a website, which is relatively static, or are you trying to build a web app, which is more dynamic and it has a lot more user interaction? You need to decide what that is. And then it depends whether you are trying to optimize for search engine optimization or not. A static website is going to do better on Google generally than a dynamic web app. So if SEO, getting people to your site via Google, is a priority, then you build static web pages that are server-side rendered, not client-side rendered. All of this also depends on your level of technical comfort. If you are not comfortable setting up Vercel and Superbase and GitHub, then start with something very basic and lovable. Learn, cut your teeth, up your skills, and then when you are ready, you can always transfer that project off onto a more sophisticated stack. You don't need to do it right now. So hopefully this has been useful, because I know it's an incredibly confusing topic, and I had lots of people asking in the WhatsApp group, lots of people asking on social media as well. So I just wanted to put together a quick guide that lays it out for you, gives you some decision-making flowcharts as well. So this will be in the newsletter tomorrow. So if you go to aiwithkyle.com, you can join the community here. You get a whole bunch of stuff, but that's going to include a 5-day AI readiness course, about 100 playbooks written about how you can use AI to start and grow businesses. They're all here. 8 different courses, including one about how to start a AI business from scratch, another one about how to give workshops, and just a whole lot more. Oh, and you get invited to a community where we can talk as well, and you get the live streams and the daily newsletter as well, where you'll have access to things like my slide deck, which I've just been using for this presentation, and also a written summary so you can work through it without having to watch the whole video. That is all available again at, I've got so many tabs here, aiwithkyle.com. Also, one other thing, I am giving a webinar on Thursday. I was going to give it tomorrow, but it's going to be on Thursday now, on specifically how you can start to go and teach businesses about artificial intelligence. There's a large gap in the market right now, because every single business on earth is wondering, oh, what the hell do we do with AI? What they need are not technical experts. They don't need people with PhDs or computer science degrees. They need people who work in that industry. So if you work as a social worker, you understand how social workers can use artificial intelligence in a way that a computer science graduate or some very well-dressed consultant from Deloitte does not, because you speak the language of that particular industry. You know what's important to them. You know what AI is useful for, what it's not useful for, and how to tell the difference. You are in a really good position to go and teach other social workers about artificial intelligence. And that is the case if you are a dentist. You go and talk to dentistry companies. If you work in construction, you go and talk to construction companies. And there's good money to be made. So I charge about £2,000 per hour to give workshops, and I have now 150 students who I've licensed my materials to, and they're off giving workshops around the world, which is really exciting, in all different languages as well. So on Thursday, I'm going to be talking about what that is, how you start to do it, how you build your public speaking skills, what kind of level of artificial intelligence knowledge do you need, how do you find clients. I'm going to be talking about all of that on Thursday at 6 p.m. UK time. It's going to be a live webinar, so you can also hit me with questions as well. It is not recorded and it is not AI. There's always somebody who asks, but it is not. And so make sure you signed up to that. If you go to aiwithkyle.com, then courses, and then AI Workshop Masterclass, you can find the sign up in there, as well as a 5-part guide about how to get started and a number of interactive tools. So that's all available there, or just sign up to the newsletter and we'll ping you details from the newsletter as well. So hopefully that is handy. Right, I'm going to hop over to some questions because my presentation is done. I know I've been yapping. Oh, thanks, Harms. Hey, Oliver. Cargo's live anywhere between 11 and 12:30 UK time. Harms is being generous there. It's somewhere between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. I would say, but I try for about 10 a.m. UK time. But as he says, the edited version will be on YouTube the next day and inside the newsletter. So I'll show you, for example, because I've just gone through this whole slide deck. Let's have a look at this one. This is a similar version from the other day where I talked about, does artificial intelligence make us dumb by removing the cognitive friction? My answer to that was yeah, basically. So this newsletter, which came out the day after, talks about that topic, and it pulls from the slide deck, so you can find all of that information. You can read through it, and it's just another way to consume the information. So you can either watch it on the live, you can read the newsletter, which comes out the next day, or you can find the edited version, which goes onto YouTube as well. Lots of different ways to do it. Harms is laughing at me. Oh, there's 65 of you on TikTok. Hello. Right. Sibonistra says, hey man, I need some advice. I build an all-in-one platform with an agent that can generate contracts, also Gmail integration. Ooh, be really careful with Gmail at the moment because they just cracked down on OpenClaw. OpenClaw Google. Let's have a look at this. So just be wary that Google are, here we go, are starting to crack down on third-party agents connecting Gmail. So this is Luke the dev, was running OpenClaw connected to my Gmail. Out of nowhere, Google disabled the account. Trying to understand what triggered it. Was this a configuration on my side or something others have seen? So there's always the potential that this guy was sending 10,000 emails an hour, and Google's said no, absolutely not. Hard to tell. All Google have said is it looks like it was being used in a way that violated Google's policies. He's saying that he only sent 5 emails through OpenClaw, and that was enough to get him banned. Maybe. I would say, one, I'd like to see this happening to other people before we can draw any conclusions. So I know there's going to be a lot of people jumping on Google being like, how dare you? But we don't know the full story. This guy could have been abusing Gmail. But just keep it in mind that this is probably going to be a pattern we see. So we saw Anthropic stomping down on OpenClaw. We might, maybe, this is speculative, we might see Google pushing in the same direction and pushing back against AI agents. So if you're building an all-in-one platform with an agent that can generate contracts with Gmail integration, just be careful with the Gmail part. Because the big labs, the frontier labs, may be pushing back on this kind of integration. In terms of all-in-one platform with an agent that can generate contracts, I'd need to know specifically what you're trying to do. I would, again, without knowing the project, I would be wary of all-in-one platforms. The reason being is very tempting with artificial intelligence to be like, hey, build me a CRM that can do all of this, make it like Salesforce but better, make sure it can do this, and oh, it should integrate into my backend, and you can give it huge projects to do. That does not necessarily make it more marketable to your users. One of the best, this is Zoho. Yeah, Zoho is one of my favorite examples of this. So Zoho is a company that does everything, absolutely everything. They do nothing well. So I put my business briefly on Zoho. here we go. They've got CRM, they've got signing. So this is like DocuSign, this is like HubSpot. Forms is like Jotform or whatever. Voice is like, I don't know, Sales IQ. This is just in sales. Marketing, they have campaigns. So this would be like Active Campaign, for example. They have social management software, which would be like Buffer or Hootsuite. In finance, they have books. So this would be like Xero, expenses. They have absolutely everything. None of their implementations of a single one of these things is well done. So you end up with, I'm sorry, Zoho, you end up with a tool that does everything but nothing well. Generally, what businesses are looking for increasingly is just you being able to do one thing very, 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 very well. So I would focus if you can, because people increasingly can build their own SaaS tools. So if you're trying to do everything, you won't be able to do everything well, and your potential customers can now go into Claude Code and build the one thing that they need to do. They can build it themselves. So you need to go in and build that one thing much better than them and be able to market it as well. Trying to do everything, it was always a weak play, as Zoho have shown. I think it's going to become increasingly less attractive to customers. So I'd focus on the thing that's really powerful. Lovable for complex. Just watch how you can get a lot of issues for more complex program. Yeah. So that was kind of the purpose of this this presentation. Lovable is great for prototyping. Lovable is great for getting the basics done. Lovable is fantastic for building something that you can then get out into the market and see whether people actually want it or not. Super important. Remember last week I did a whole presentation on this, talking about validating your ideas. Most people don't do this, and this is why they fail in business. Instead, they will go into secret, they will build privately, they will be a stealth startup, and then they will launch after 12 months, only to find that nobody gives a damn. So instead, what you need to do is you need to launch ASAP, your minimum viability product, your proof of concept, see if anyone actually cares, run some adverts to a landing page, for example, and then and only then start to flesh it out, start to scale. So Lovable is fantastic for those proof of concepts. It's fantastic for minimum viability products, getting something out of the door ASAP. And then if you do need to scale up, if you do need to make it more complex, you just take the code, you push it out to GitHub, and then you're going to refactor it using Claude Code or Codex or Cursor, using Opus 4.6, for example. So it means that you're only polishing and scaling what is actually worth polishing and scaling, rather than what most people do, which is trying to create the most perfect product, only to find that nobody gives a damn. Absolutely nobody cares about it. Can you code a theme to use on Shopify? Yeah, probably. I mean, let's try. I can't. I have to use my browser. So I'll do it. I'll use the, no, oh my God, that's annoying. I'll just use Claude because it's visible. Because I need to do it in my browser. But I would just say, can I code a Shopify theme? Can't even spell. What do you need from me to do this? Very basically, I'll just ask Claude. I personally don't know what Shopify themes are built in. Okay, they're HTML. Liquid. I do know this from about 10 years ago. So it uses Liquid HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Yeah, that would be fine. If you're trying to build themes, if you're trying to build a theme that you want to sell, then that's going to be a different project from building a theme just for your own personal store. If you're building it for your own personal store, you'd run through all these questions based on you, like given your logo, given your brand colors, etc. If you're building a theme that you're going to sell to other Shopify things, you would say, I want to build this as a sellable theme. And then it's going to change the questions it requires. Got it. Great goal. Building a sellable Shopify theme is a solid business move. Thanks, Claude. So I would start this way. Asking Claude or asking Codex or whatever tool you're using what it needs from you to be able to do the job. And then you are going to, as the expert, you're going to respond and go back and forward with this kind of interview process until you get a good project plan. And then you can take that into Claude Code, you can take it into Cursor, you can take it into Codex, doesn't really matter, and have it flesh out the project. Sir, can you review my website? Never done this before. Let's see if, is it safe? Oh, it's Indonesian. I mean, I don't speak, is it Bahasa? Looks quite nice to me. Let's see if it's responsive. I mean, it looks fine to me. I am not a designer. My oh, what happened there? My business partner is on the YouTube live right now watching this, and he will confirm this. I am not a designer, so I'm the wrong person to ask, honestly. It looks nice to me, though. I'm sure other people can give you some comments. But I don't have an eye. Like when I design stuff, it just looks horrendous. And for me, it's like, okay, it's functional, we're good. So I'm not the right person to ask, sorry. Pitch Kitchen says, where are you moving? I am moving to Cyprus in a couple of months. I haven't booked anything or sorted anything out, but I am going to be moving to Cyprus for a couple of reasons. Where do you get SaaS ideas? You talk to customers, you talk to people who have problems, and you work out how to solve them. What I would say is, so again, I'm going to refer back to this. This was issue 140 of the newsletter, which was last week, Thursday or Friday, I think, where I went through, it's a 50-minute long live talking about how to validate market demand. So your ideas are not that important. Ideas are a dime a dozen, ideas are cheap. It's implementation that matters, and that is even more the case now with artificial intelligence. Increasingly, having an idea means nothing. It didn't mean much before. Now it means less than nothing, because everyone can have ideas. You can ask Claude, hey, I need some business ideas. It's easy. So what you need to do is you need to validate those ideas very quickly, because when an idea goes, or when your idea becomes real, when it becomes an offer, that's when the rubber meets the road. That's when we're actually seeing whether people care about this offer or not. There's a very good book called the $100 offer. No, what's it called? $100 million offer. Excuse me. Hormozi's book. Now, regardless of what you think about Hormozi himself, it's a good book. So 100 million offer has a framework for developing offers. Highly recommend having a look at that. But what you need to do is, once you have turned your idea into a basic offer, you need to validate it. Most people just start to build. Don't do that. Instead, put together some landing pages and start to run adverts to those landing pages and see if anyone gives a damn. So if you're running, let's say, $10 of adverts a day and you have 10 people sign up, so it's costing about $1 per sign up, just to get their email address, you know, okay, there's something here, people are interested in this. And then you would decide, okay, I'm going to start building this out, I'm going to sell them. You can also pre-sell, so you can put together a page and you can say, hey, it's not ready yet, but in 2 weeks time, I'll be launching this cohort, I'll be launching this service, I'll be launching this product. Do you want to put down a deposit, or do you want to pre-buy at a vastly discounted rate? If people buy, that gives you a signal, okay, this is worth pursuing. The point here is we spend more time building our offer, we spend more time building our sales page than we do our product. Whereas most people, especially when they start their first business, they will build in secret, they will perfect the product, they will launch it, nobody cares. And that is a massive blow to your confidence as an entrepreneur, especially if it's your first business. And unfortunately, it leads people to do the same thing again and again and again. They will think, oh, it's because my idea was rubbish. No, it's because you didn't talk to anyone, you didn't talk to any customers. You have to talk to people as soon as possible. You need to put things in front of them and say, hey, do you want to buy this? And if they say, yes, please, I'd like to buy this, then you build it. So we don't build the product and find a market, we find the market, then build a product. It's a subtle but super important shift. So for example, last year, I put out a TikTok video and a tweet saying, hey, I teach workshops to businesses. When I go and teach a business how to use artificial intelligence, I charge around $1,000, $2,000 per hour to go and teach workshops. and I've got a lot of demand and I can't keep up with all the demand. So what I'm thinking about doing is teaching you guys how to go and give those workshops. So you can go and give those workshops. You can collect $1,000 an hour, $2,000 an hour, and I will license you my material, show you how to find clients, how to give workshops, how to deal with tricky questions, etc. I'll do all of that for you, and you will go and deliver the workshops and collect the money. Does that sound interesting? So I just did a video asking that, and I think that first video on TikTok we had maybe 200, 300 people say, yes, please, I am very interested in this. That gives me validation that this is a product worth developing. So to make it clear, I had not developed the product. I had not created, I had not packaged up my training materials. I had not created a curriculum. I had not created a course or a cohort. Instead, I just said, are you interested in this? Once I had a couple of hundred people say, yeah, that sounds great. That then made me go forward to the next stage, which was sending out a survey to those 200 people saying, hey, what would you like to see in this? And I started to build the product with them. And that led to about $500,000 in revenue from that. Basically that TikTok saying, hey, would anyone like this? So that's what you need to do. You need to start with customer problems. You need to start with finding out what they need solved, which means you have to talk to people, which bad news, you have to talk to people. Good news, lots of builders, lots of engineers, lots of creators don't like talking to customers, which means if you can get over yourself, you can get over your ego and ask people, then you're in a really good position, because most of your competition won't do it. They would much rather hide in private and build and build and build and feel busy rather than go and talk to customers. Any benefit in taking a version 1 proof of concept WordPress site onto GitHub path or launch as is now? Just launch. Still about, I think it's about 60% of the 60%, 50% of the world's web pages are built on WordPress. It's fine. WordPress is a little bit old-fashioned. Doesn't matter. When people land on your website, they do not know. Your customers do not know. Your visitors do not know. So who cares? Just launch. And if you need to make it more complicated, if you need a more sophistication, then later go ahead and do that. But just launch. Jojo Tech says, I keep missing your live streams. Now I've got get back to work, sorry, but everything is available on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, I am Kyle Balmer. You'll be able to find all of the recordings of the live streams and, more importantly, kind of tidied up, clipped versions of every single day as well. So it's a bit easier to watch as well. That sunk time graphic could be me. Sorry. That wasn't specifically targeted, but it's true. If you, let me pull this up because I think it's a really good guide. If you spend a year perfecting a product, building a product, and then launching and nothing happens, that's a huge amount of time wasted, months and months and months and months. What I'd much rather people do is spend a couple of $100s on adverts, sending adverts to a test page, a landing page, a sales page, to see whether people care. If they do not care, if you do not get any traction, if you don't get any emails, you don't make any pre-sales, then yeah, you've wasted $200. $200 is cheap compared to spending a year of your life working on something. So we tend to undervalue our own time and overvalue cash. It is much better just to spend some money, find out nobody cares, and then make a decision based on that. So yeah, the data will tell you whether you should proceed with the idea or not, or whether you should just scrap it. And if you scrap it, you've lost a couple of days, a couple of $100, fine, you move on to the next thing. Ideas and implementation are becoming quite easy with artificial intelligence. We can have an idea and have a proof of concept ready this afternoon, less than that. Like we can have it ready in an hour or so. So you need to move faster, and building in secret for 6 months, 12 months, that was already not a great idea. And now with artificial intelligence, it's just not going to work. So you need to build fast, ship fast, see what people want, spend a little bit of money advertising it, unless you have built up an audience. That's an alternative, but that takes a long time. And then you keep launching. So you go from idea to a landing page, run ads, you get the data, you iterate, repeat, dum 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 dum, much faster. And each time you're going around this loop, you are learning. It's not just sunk cost. It is a high velocity learning loop. Anyone who wants that guide, it's update 140 on AI with Kyle. How to validate ideas without distribution like yours. Oh, hey, Ben. Adverts. Facebook adverts in particular. Sorry, meta ads. So meta ads to Instagram and Facebook. You will, I think I've got it here. Here we go. Budget, spend about £20 a day for a week. So you don't need to hire anybody, just set this up yourself. You can ask Claude to write the ad copy for you, but the most important thing is going to be the video. So you need to record a video. What I did a couple of weeks ago, I had Claude prepare scripts for, I mean, it ended up being about 90 videos. So I created 3 body scripts. So the main body of the script, I created 3, I took 3 takes of each of those. That gave me 9 videos. And then I had 10 hooks, which I applied to those 9 videos. So Harminder had to do all of this editing, unfortunately. I think he's still in chat. So we had 10 times 9 total. So we had 90 videos that we could test, because the most important thing is the hook. It's that first second or so. The rest of it is kind of unimportant. You just need to nail that. So we had about 90 videos. Claude helped with all the scripting, but then I sat down and did the actual recording, loaded them all up into Facebook. You can't run 90 ads on a $20 budget. So you would do a lot less. I would say 5 ads maybe. And you go broad with your targeting. You let Facebook narrow down and find who is converting, and then you just run the ads. And yeah, it's going to cost money. Yes, that's kind of the option if you don't have a large audience, is you just run adverts. It's also kind of cleaner, because if you have a large audience, you can always go to them and say, hey, I've got something, do you want to buy it? And you'll get a rush of purchases. People being like, oh yeah, cool. I like you. I like what you do. I'm going to buy it. Great, cool. That is not really sustainable, because once you've done that with your audience a couple of times, they're going to be like, yeah, no, I'm good. I've already got it, or no, thank you. So running it with a cold audience is really important, because if we can get any kind of traction there, any kind of sales from somebody who doesn't know who you are, that's a really good signal. So yes, you need to spend a bit of money. It's going to be a couple of £100 to test an idea. But that is much better than the sunk cost of this. So even now, even though I have an audience of 250,000 or so, this is how we test ideas, because we cannot rely on the goodwill of the audience members being like, yeah, sure, Kyle, I'll buy whatever you buy, whatever you have to sell. That's not sustainable. So running this method of running adverts, spending a few £100 gives you a much better idea of whether it's a goer or not. What's a good alternative to OpenClaw? Manus have just released something. I forget what it's called. It's just called Manus Agent. I thought I had a different name. Manus Personal Agent Mode, it's called. So that is probably a safer alternative. Here we go. Manus in your chat. There are some limitations to it, but that's kind of everything's limited compared to OpenClaw. OpenClaw is very powerful because it's not limited. You can attach it to anything. You can make it do pretty much anything you want. That introduces a huge amount of security risk, unfortunately. So I would use something like this as a stopgap until Anthropic and ChatGPT release their own kind of tidy versions, which they will. I mean, OpenAI has hired Peter, the creator of OpenClaw, so he'll be working on something for them internally whilst maintaining the foundation as well. And Anthropic, I imagine, are working on something which is like Claude Code, but more generally applicable and accessible via your phone as well. I also imagine that's part of the reason why they stomped on ClaudeBot as hard as they did, because they're probably working on something similar. Also, ClaudeBot is a very cheeky name because it sounds a lot like Claude. So from a legal point of view, I get it. But I think if OpenClaw is too complex and you find the security issues worrying, which you should, just don't touch it for now and wait a couple of months, and the Frontier Labs will have a version. If you need something right now, try out Manus and the Manus personal chat. I really like Manus. They do great stuff. I think Manus only works in Telegram is one of the limitations, but I think it's Telegram. So you can't get it in your WhatsApp or your Slack, for example. Yes, there we go. So it's in Telegram. Oh, that's a good question. How many hours per week do you work? Do you experience burnout? It's weird. It's a really good question. So first thing, I really enjoy my work. So it doesn't feel like work. So even when I go on holiday, that's why I'm terrible at somewhere like the beach. I'll always be sitting there. As soon as my mind kind of unwinds for a moment, immediately I'm like, ooh, I should write a book. Or, this would be a great idea for a course. Or, oh, I could build this, foundational AI knowledge group or whatever. That's just kind of how my brain works. And I enjoy that. I enjoy that process. So even sitting in a relaxing place, my mind will be boom, 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 coming up with things. And I'm kind of okay with that because I enjoy the work. If I was doing it for someone else, if it was work that I didn't enjoy doing, I imagine I'd burn out a lot quicker. The other thing is I get to control my time and my energy. So if I am exhausted for whatever reason, I will just start work later in the day. I'll probably still get it done. In fact, I prefer working in the evening than I do in the morning. But if I don't want to work on a particular day or I'm not really feeling it, I don't have to. Like the business will continue running. There's very little that needs to be done every single day because it is self-directed now. It's me and one business partner. He's in YouTube chat at the moment, Harminder. If we don't do any work on a particular day, the whole thing does not come falling down. But we want to work because we want it to grow. We want to be able to help more people. We want to increase our revenues. We want to be able to build this into something larger. So it's a different situation from being forced to work. But there is still a kind of a push and impetus to like, no, you've got to get on with this because AI is really hot, really important. There are a lot of people who don't know about it yet. There's this chart you've probably seen. It's been going around social media. I'm sure it would pop up immediately. Here we go. That was easy. Which is of people who have used and not used artificial intelligence. So the grey squares are people who have not used AI. It's a little misleading. The grey squares are actually the people who haven't used an AI chatbot, an LLM chatbot. So it's a little misleading. Everyone uses AI every day if you're using the internet. But I think it's still important to realize that we're in a space where if you make the right moves now, you're going to do very, very well. So this about 16% of humanity are using AI. They're using chatbots like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. About 0.3% of humanity is paying for it, paying $20 a month, and about 0.05%, between 2 and 5 million people are using coding tools. They're using Claude Code, they're using Cursor. So you might be watching this thinking, oh, I'm feeling really far behind. But that's because you are in a space where this kind of content is shown to you. So you see people doing really cool things with OpenClaw and think, oh my God, if I don't do this now, it's game over. I'm going to be on the streets. No. We're in this tiny, we are, we're a subset of this little red cube here. And the rest of the world is not doing this stuff. That said, this is what kind of drives me forward twofold. There's one, which is, hey, this is early. So there's a really good opportunity to make a mark here and to do some important work. This 16% adoption rate is equivalent to the internet in 2004. Now, the internet in 2004 was a weird place. Facebook had not been invented. I think MySpace was just starting to take off in 2004. Cloud computing wasn't really a thing. We certainly didn't have streaming. Like you had to download videos if you wanted to watch them, and it would take a couple of hours to download a short clip. So the internet was a really weird place back then in 2004. Shit, you were sent to the internet on a CD, an AOL CD. It's like, here's 100 hours of internet. Like, it was bizarre. We are kind of in that weird stage at the moment where there's a few of us who are paying a lot of attention to this, whereas the rest of the world don't have access or don't care. So because of that, making moves now is like making moves in the early 2000s for the internet. You can put yourself into a really good position. The other thing is I want to help these people in grey. I talk to people on a daily basis through social media, through workshops, through just talking to people who are not using AI, and their lives could be a lot easier. They could do a lot more. They could work less if they had artificial intelligence in their life. So I want to help them to be able to do this. I want to help them to be ready for what is coming as well, because this is going to take jobs. There is no way around that fact. AI is going to remove tasks. It's already doing that, which means we don't need to hire as many people. We're already starting to see that. There's also larger macroeconomic trends, but I think when we get a bounce back into the good times, if that ever happens, companies will realize, we don't need to hire as many people, because AI can augment the stuff we have, or it can fully automate some of these tasks. So I think a couple of years from now, we're going to see, as economies bounce back, a divide between people who are embracing and using artificial intelligence and the people who have stuck their head in the sand and want nothing to do with it. I want to help as many people as possible. I'm aiming for 1 million people, which is 1/3 of one of these dots, helping them get AI ready for what is about to come, because otherwise it's going to hit them like a train, and we don't want that. Because just because somebody's not adopting a technology right now doesn't mean that they don't deserve to be helped. I've seen a lot of meanness against people, like calling them Luddites, calling them backwards. Let's help, let's be generous, So for these reasons, I work hard, and I want to work hard. I don't generally feel burnout, and if I am feeling, I'm moving towards burnout, I will just take a day off. I will just not work or book in a holiday. Again, I have the freedom to do that, so I'm able to more or less control it, I would say. So it's a very long answer to how many hours per week. I think I was working it out myself. Do you think there's market for completely private, no download, web-based LLM RAG? Yeah, for sure. I would make it as non-technical as possible, because people can do it. Oh, no download, web-based. If you can make it non-technical for the people who care about these things, and for businesses, there's definitely going to be a market, because people can deploy this themselves, but most people don't know how, and don't even know it's an option. So if you can market that, then 100%. Thinking of starting a vibe coding company to create tools for companies, you think it's a good idea to? I would go and a faster way to money is to go and train their staff. Train their staff internally about how to do this stuff. I'm not seeing anyone become that person, like the vibe coding for business guy. So I think that's a really good niche that you can move into. So you start helping people build build tools within their businesses, and you do that through social media. You go and give workshops. You can write a book. You just become the expert in that particular topic. So I would help people do it themselves. The problem with an outsider going in and vibe coding tools for a business is that the only tools that are useful are actually based in the knowledge and the domain experience of being in that business. So as soon as you give those tools, as soon as you show somebody who has that domain experience and has that knowledge how easy it is to vibe code something, how they just need to type in a sentence like, hey, this is what I want to do, this is how it should work, into Claude Code. Once they realize that, they're like, oh, so I can just do this. So if you can go out and help them to learn how to do that, I think that's a really powerful position. If you are doing it for them as a consultant, most of it is just getting the ideas out of their head. And then all you're going to do is relay their ideas into a prompt and then maybe help with the implementation a bit. But I think that's not where the value add is. The value add is in helping them to do it themselves. My son is in high school and works with chatbots. How to grow in healthy skill and materials? Yeah, so I don't have a child, so I can't answer this. I would love to be able to answer this. How can kids use this? I have people in my WhatsApp group who work on this, especially on this with parents and children and educators, and how we need to be thinking about artificial intelligence for developing people, developing minds. I will ask them and then relay back an answer, because I'm not really qualified to answer this. But I think it's something that needs to be thought about. I mean, very anecdotally, I see students, whenever I'm like working out of a cafe or somewhere and I see students who are studying, they all have ChatGPT open. That's not going to be great when it comes to learning, because we need friction to be able to learn. This is actually something I covered last week. Where is it? Yeah. Does AI make us dumb? So this is, I gave a presentation on this last week. It is number 143 if you go to AI with Kyle. And this is an example of when I had to go to university, and the old way was I'd be given an essay I had to write every single week. I'd be given a reading list, and then I had to go off and work it out myself. So it meant a lot of dead ends, a lot of frustration, a lot of kind of working out how to learn, kind of meta learning. That's all gone now, because you can now say, hey, I've got an essay about XYZ to Claude, and it's going to be able to get it done very well. Or if you're being a bit more conscientious, you can say, hey, I've got an essay about this. Can you help me write it? Can you show me what I should be reading? Can we form up some arguments together? Can you put together my first draft? That's a conscientious version of it. But it's still very hard to make a kid go back to this method of doing everything manually, going to the library, getting the books, reading the books, putting together the argument, having to scrap drafts, getting feedback, having to redo it, etc. It's very hard to get a growing mind who has other priorities, like going out, seeing friends, to do all of that hard work when they don't have to anymore. And that is not their fault. I would 100% skip all of the work as well. And I'm sure most of us would if we had a tool like this at our beck and call. So we need to work out what that means for education. We need to work out what that means for kids as well. You say, I disagree philosophically with ChatGPT and have argued with his facts. Friction is necessary. Yeah. So you are arguing back, you're pushing back on ChatGPT. That's because you know about subjects. So when it comes out with nonsense, you can be like, no. Whereas a kid might not necessarily have that judgment. They might not necessarily have that ability to push back, especially if everything is taken as gospel. So we need to teach them, hey, everything this is bringing up is not necessarily factual, especially if it's not sourcing it, especially if it's not bringing in information. So at the moment, I'm putting together a book. I want to write a book. So I'm putting together a proposal that I'm going to send to agents, etc. And one of the big factors in it is I believe that AI is going to take jobs. I think it's going to come, and as somebody says in chat, it's going to hit us like a train. It's coming like a train for sure. It is going to absolutely destroy employment markets and whole industries. When I talk to the AI about that, it always couches my language. It's like, well, actually, there might be some task level degradation, but it will create new jobs. And I'm like, no, Claude, Claude. It's going to take jobs. I'm telling you this. And it always pushes back on that. So I think in the system instructions, there is something about don't allow for like alarmist narratives about AI. See, but that comes from me engaging with the topic, knowing a fair amount about it, talking about it on a daily basis, and being able to push back on Claude, saying, no, shut up, Claude. Like, it's going to take our jobs. But otherwise, it would just keep sneaking these little things in, like, well, it's not that simple. There's going to be a nuanced approach to the new economy. It's like, no. Children don't have that, though. And teenagers and students don't necessarily have that wherewithal to push back and say, you're talking complete bullshit right now, Claude. And that's the worry. That's a huge worry. I'm going to go ahead and block you. Somebody's spamming. They're going to pay $5,000 to somebody. I don't think you are. Back in 1999, 2000, I approached my local newspaper to see if they were interested on internet tips. I love that. And I bet they weren't, because so 1999, 2000 was the boom, obviously the dot-com boom, and then the crash was starting 2000, 2001, when it all came tumbling down. So they were at a similar position to where we are right now, where there is a lot of hype. So there's a huge amount of hype around the businesses. Like all of the money is flowing into them. It's all flowing into Nvidia, Oracle, OpenAI, and it's going around in a big circle. Financially, it does look like there's a bubble. So people wrongly conflate the financial bubble with the technological bubble. So we've had technological bubbles like NFTs, for example, didn't really have a use, but still they went up and up and up and up in price. That is a technology bubble as well as a financial bubble. Whereas with the internet, we had a financial bubble because stupid money was being spent on businesses just because they had a website. Not because it was good business, but because it had a website. Pets.com is the famous example. That came crashing down, but the internet did not. The internet did pretty well. In fact, after 2000, that's when it really got into its stride. So again, MySpace was 2003, 2004. Facebook was 2007. The first smartphone, our first iPhone was about 2007 as well. So we had this enthusiasm. We had a crash with the dot-com boom and bust. And then we had the building of what we consider the internet today. So things like video streaming, things like social media, things like cloud computing did not exist at the time of the crash. That came up later. We are potentially at a similar place right now with artificial intelligence. Again, this is a chart of large language model usage or chatbot usage. About 16% of humanity are using chatbots now on a daily basis. That is like being in the internet in 2004. It was a very different internet to what we have today. Extremely different. Already asked Sabrina what age to start basics like Python. At age 6, they need to start something. You know what? We love Sabrina. That's Sabrina Ramanov, if people are wondering who Sabrina is, who you should go and follow. There are things early on, I would get them started with like robot kits. Let's see, 6 years is quite young. Oh no, here we go. Yeah, things like Lego Creator. So there are little robots. TechLab, let's have a look at that one. Little robots that you can build, and they tend to be built on things like Raspberry Pis. To get them working and to put the brains in them is generally using Python or some variant on Python. But these are obviously a bit more. Oh, they've got unitaries. No, don't need that. I don't need a G1 humanoid robot. Look for kits that you can build with your kid, because there's the fun of building it, but then you need the coding in order to get the brain working, in order to get it functioning, and it's generally done in Python. That means that there's an actual practical reason why you're doing it, because just learning coding for the sake of coding seems extremely abstract, even for adults, especially the way it's taught, which is, teaching you what a variable is and what a function is, and then kind of building step by step by step. It's very tricky to connect that to the reality of what you can do with it. That's why vibe coding is actually really exciting, because you get to build first using the Python. You get the excitement of having built something that you can show to your friends, that you can play around with, that is useful in your day-to-day, and it acts as like a gateway drug, which allows you to get deeper into building. And as you go along, you're going to start learning about coding, because you'll start to want to understand what's going on, how you can do things better. You learn about the things we need to do as a programmer, like learn how to hook up to GitHub, learning what deployment is. You'll have to learn how to use the terminal, for example. But all of this learning is attached to the project that you're building. So rather than working your way through a very dry textbook teaching you about Python, like step by step from the fundamentals up, you are building and then circumstantially learning the additional bits of code that you need to. You can also put Claude Code into learning mode, where it will do the work for you, and then it will say, hey, can you see what I've done here? Or why do you think I've done this? It will test you. Or it will say, I'm going to go ahead and build that function for you. But before I do that, what variables are we calling on here, and why are we doing that? It will ask you questions, so you have to learn alongside it. Very, very cool usage. So I think it's the same for adults, and it's the same for children. If you are learning to code, it should be for a project. It should be for something tangible rather than just abstract code. And for kids, robotics are great. So the Lego robotics, let's see what age they're for. 4 to 16. Here we go. So Lego Education Spike Essential is for 6+. There we go. Very cool. Why is that? Oh, that's for school. I was wondering why it's 200. But you can buy little kits like this. So I would start. Oh, obviously that one doesn't actually. That's not robotics. That doesn't have a brain. But this would be the way I'd get them into it personally. I'm interested to see what Sabrina said too. Studio by Doug said, I start coding around 12. What is the best way to be an engineer, in your opinion? Is pursuing that any good? Yeah, if you're building the AIs, real good, and you can do very well. However, it depends where you are right now. Like, are you pre-college? So you'd have to go through computer science and then specializing into AI engineering. A lot of people will be doing that right now, but there'll be very good jobs in AI engineering. So building the AIs, building the models, the actual building of the frontier level large language models. There's a relatively small number of people on the planet who do that. A couple of thousand people. It's pretty niche. But if you can get into that, then you will make oodles of money and be in a very small subset. I would say that becoming a coder, like a programmer who builds software for a living, is increasingly risky. I don't want to say it's not going to exist, because that's probably hyperbole. But increasingly the syntax, like the line by line code, can be performed at about the same level by Claude Code, and it's only going to get better. The writing is on the wall, basically. So the argument for the last couple of years has been like, oh, well, it's fine as autocomplete, but it can't, it can't actually write a whole line of code, and then it could write a whole line of code. So people are like, oh, well, that's, yeah, fine. It can do line by line, but it can't do a function, and then it could do functions. And then it started to go up and up and up and up, and people kept moving the goalpost back, being like, oh, well, that's fine, but it can't, create a whole module. But like, oh, okay, it's done that. So this has happened in the last couple of years. So if you're thinking now about training in computer science to become a programmer, that's risky. As your job. If you are training specifically to become an AI engineer to work at the top of the field in AI specifically, probably a good idea, at least for the next couple of years. Yes, there will be a point where AI can potentially do it better than humans. We're not there yet, which is why Anthropic, OpenAI, etc. is still hiring. And I think Anthropic put out a job the other day, which was $750,000 a year or something like that. So there's very good money for those who can move into it. It's just, that's going to be a very small percentage of working coders, unfortunately. Yeah, Studio saying programming is gone. Computers can do it. Yeah. There's no two ways about it. And anything that is safe, AI is rolling up the levels, and it's rolling up them fast. So the C compiler, I know it's just a little toy, but Anthropic, they set a bunch of parallel Claudes on it. I think it was 4.6. Here we go. We tasked Opus 4.6 using agent teams to build a C compiler. The compilers are not easy to make. Really not easy. And then mostly walked away. So what they did, they set up this team of how many? 16 agents. And they set them up. Some of them were managers, some of them would oversee, some of them would check, some of them did the actual work, some of them focused on this part of the program, some of them focused on this part. It was all orchestrated by the AI itself, so they worked out how best to break up their resources. Then the 16 agents worked on it for 2,000 Claude Code sessions, $20,000 in API costs, which is not much, and they produced a 100,000 line compiler. More lines is not necessarily better, but they produced a compiler that can build Linux 6.9. And I think it took about 2 weeks. So it ran for 2 weeks, writing its own test units, testing it, keeping its own agents on track, checking on their work, improving until it felt, okay, no, we are ready now to show this to the humans. That's where we're moving. And this is just a toy example. but quite an impressive one. So right now the defense is, oh, well, we'll never be able to architect software. Like, it can't work at that kind of high level. I mean, it probably will. Just give it a year or so. We love moving the goalposts. Oh, Studio says that's incredible. Yeah, if you Google building a C compiler with a team of parallel Claudes, okay, you, as a coder, you know that building a compiler is a... we're moving on from, vibe coding a portfolio website. Building a compiler is, they're showing off basically. But there's a whole summary about it here and how they did it. Thoughts about Elon Musk's everything app and data in space? So I lived in China for years, where they do actually have everything apps. So they have Weixin or WhatsApp, not WhatsApp, excuse me, WeChat. So WeChat is an everything app. Oh wait, I forgot about my phone. I'm not going to be able to show it to the screen properly, but let me just pull it up and see what I can do on it. I don't have Chinese residency at the moment, but I can. Here we go. I can manage my wealth. I've only got 2 yuan in here at the moment, so I can buy stocks and shares. I can pay my utility bills. I've got public services here. What can I do? I can get a taxi to come to me. I can donate to charity. I can manage my health records. I can book rail and flight, hotels, easy travel service. I can buy things. So group buying, event tickets, specials. I can buy stuff directly from the shop. This is all one app. It's also a payment app. So Alipay and WeChat, you can use and use them to pay. Let me pull up the Alipay app. In fact, if I still have it on my phone, do I not? That's going to be annoying next time I go to China. No, I do. So the Alipay app, no, I'm locked out. Alipay, you can order food, you can get a taxi, you can get a concierge to go shopping for you and bring you, private shopping. You can buy train tickets. You can do absolutely everything on these applications. So that's where the idea of an everything app kind of started. And they do it really well in China. And it's, I've got to say, really convenient, extremely convenient when you are traveling there and if you are living there. It also centralizes all control. There's a reason for wanting to do this. I think the problem with Musk building an everything app was, one, he was focusing on doing it for the American market. So it wasn't really everything for everyone. It was for America. But he immediately ran into difficulties with federal versus state banking requirements. So if you want to build an everything app, you need to be able to do transactions through it. That's kind of what Alipay is. It's primarily a financial transactions app. It's for paying for stuff. So by running straight into those kind of state difficulties, I think it was a little bit dead on arrival. I used to live in America too, and the American banking systems are very behind on technology. So I remember when I was living there, you could still use a personal check. Absolutely wild. I'm sure that's not the case now. They did not have chip and pin. That was bizarre. So in the UK we had chip and pin. We'd had it for years, but over there you'd still kind of swiping and signing things. This was again years ago. But then the same thing happened with things like contactless. That came a lot later to America than it did to Europe. And again, this is because a lot of the banking system is wrapped up in a huge amount of regulation. Each of the states has a different one. So for a company like Visa or MasterCard or the banks like Chase, etc., to roll out an update to the way you do banking or the way you do finance is really difficult because you need to get it agreed in all of the states. Otherwise it becomes very piecemeal. So as long as that is the case, I think it's very difficult to do an everything app because the financial transactions is the core of it. That's why it works in China, because they've got the banking licenses basically, and they're able to do everything through the application. Extremely, extremely convenient. But it does require having a unified system, which China has and America doesn't really. There's also, I imagine, I don't think it ever got this far, but I imagine a lot of Americans would be like, no, we don't want everything to go through one app. That's too dangerous. That's too much control. Very fair, a very fair argument. Do you speak Chinese? Why did you move back to China? And after America, why did you settle back in the UK? So after University. I went to Oxford here in the UK. I moved to Vietnam. I started a television station in Vietnam, co-founded it. After that, I moved to America, got my MBA at NYU Stern, and I was also at the film school, but I didn't actually complete the degree there, so I was doing film production. Following that, I moved to China. I lived in Beijing for about 2 years or so. Followed by, while I was in America, I also lived in Texas and in Southern California for a while, like a year so each, and then moved to China and then moved back to the UK. I'm about to move over to Cyprus, probably in the next couple of months, because as much as I love the UK, as much as I love London, I'm from London. There are some problems. I'm not going to get into it on stream, but there are some good reasons to leave. The fact that it's been raining non-stop for 2 months is one of them, the smallest of them. Studio by Doug says, making a compiler is not a fun job. Yeah. So the fact that an AI tool managed to put together a compiler in 2 weeks with $20,000 of tokens is, that's a hell of a project. Ekmene says tax. Tax is one of them. Tax is one of the big reasons. I don't mind paying tax at all. I'm happy to pay tax. I just want my tax to do something. And I think this is super anecdotal, but I went outside yesterday. I pay my council tax. I pay a lot of business tax, and the streets are a mess. There's just shit everywhere. They haven't been cleaned. They're full of potholes. And I spend quite a lot of time in Asia, in China, in Singapore. In China, Beijing in particular, like you go into a mall, for example, and it is spotless. The floors are gleaming. You can see your reflection in the floor. Same with the train station, stuff like that. Like it feels, coming back to the UK feels a little bit like a third world country sometimes when you've spent time in places like Singapore and China. So I don't mind paying taxes. It's just I do not see them being spent on making things work, on giving us good public transport and trains and keeping our streets clean. I just don't see it. So that's part of the reason, absolutely. I am within the top percentage of earners in the UK. I do fine income-wise. I can't buy a proper house. So there is something wrong there. There's something that doesn't add up as a very high earner, not being able to just buy a house. And instead that being something that is still out of reach. Yeah, something's gone wrong, horribly wrong. Studio says they waste it on crap. Oh my god. Don't get me started on the AI hub again. The government UK one. I did a post about this a few weeks ago. Where is it? The AI Skills Hub. This thing, it's this crappy... they purchased a template. Well, not even purchased a template. They use this thing called Envision Community, which costs, I think it's about $90 a month or something. Yeah, $90 a month, $150, whatever. And they filled it with a bunch of third-party links. So if you go to the catalog, it is just a bunch of like Microsoft and Amazon and Google links. These are all Microsoft, which is absolutely fine. It's a resource page to help UK people learn how to use AI. So they filled it with third-party links, built it on a off-the-shelf platform. This cost £4.1 million of taxpayers' money, which went to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they delivered this piece of crap, which isn't even vibe coded. They didn't even bother to build it from scratch. So it's things like this. It's like, well, why am I paying you taxes if you're just going to spaff it on this kind of stuff? But all of these reasons over the last couple of years kind of built up and built up and built up and built up. And then I was like, no, I'm done. I'm off. Labour being in power is the issue. Nah, it's been going on for a while. It's not just Labour. You don't fancy Dubai? No. No, not at all. Also, my partner's Cypriot, so family's there. So it makes a lot of sense. But no, Dubai has never appealed to me, honestly. Great. I'm going to finish up because I've been blabbing for an hour and a half. Fantastic. If you want to get the recording, make sure you check out YouTube. Everything's going to be available there. And tomorrow, what we covered today about building a website, plus all of the other news, will appear inside of the newsletter. You can sign up for that at aiwithkyle.com and join the community here, totally free. And you'll get a bunch of courses, a bunch of playbooks as well for free. And the summary, the newsletter, everything that we've talked about today will appear inside of tomorrow's newsletter. Nice and written up. I'll give you the slide deck as well, so you can get all of this if you want to use that as well. Awesome. So aiwithkyle.com, make sure you are subscribed, and I will be back tomorrow about the same time, 10, 11 a.m. With more AI news. And if there's no news, I'll be running through a similar presentation like this. Thank you guys. I'm closing out YouTube.